So here to tell us more, we're delighted to welcome on stage Henn, Senior Intelligence Manager at UK Home Office Intelligence, and Tom Torensma, Detective Inspector with the Dutch National Police. Kat and Tom, thank you so much. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. A very, very warm thank you to TAPA for creating this opportunity for us. We're very happy to be here today. And we have a short presentation for you guys. It's about what we've created about 4 years ago in the Netherlands, and where we saw an opportunity to join forces with our UK partners about 2 years ago. We saw that it had a direct effect, and that is what we'd like to share with you. And we know that yesterday and today is also mainly about cargo theft. We spoke about fake carrier fraud. But as introduced, we're also going to talk to you about serious organized crime, because it is a very big issue, and it is something we see on a day-to-day basis. My name is Tom. I'm with the Dutch National Police. I've been within the police for about 12 years now. And I've started the TFOC program 4 years ago with 2 of my colleagues.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kat. As you saw before, I'm a senior manager for Home Office Intelligence. Recently, UK Border Force changed its name, and now it's called Home Office. And that's why, hence the slight confusion. We're both law enforcement officers. So I'll apologize for myself in advance. I'm not a natural presenter, but we'll do our best.
There you go. And I'm Dutch, so my apologies for the accent, but I'll do what I can. So in the introduction, it was actually already said, every criminal needs transport. And that is, in fact, very much true. We see it happening, as I mentioned, on a day-to-day basis. If we look at our large criminal investigations, we see transport and logistics in basically every investigation coming back, whether that is because they are deliberately part of a criminal organization or whether they are being misused without knowing it. We see it happening at all times. And why is that? The reason to that is, if we look at our criminal organizations worldwide, the way they get rich, their way of making large amounts of money, and I'm talking about billions, is because they move physical products to someone who's willing to pay a lot of money to use that product. Whether we're talking about illicit goods such as narcotics, we're talking about weapons, we're talking about money laundering or anything else, the fact of the matter is it needs to be transported from A to eventually an end customer. And that is the problem we have been facing for the last couple of years. When we started in 2020 with a TFOC program in the Netherlands, we saw that willingly or unwillingly, the international logistics sector plays an amazing role within serious organized crime groups. And again, the reason is because so many goods needs to be transported. We're talking about narcotics, we're talking about weapons, we're talking about cigarettes, we're talking about human smuggling, but we're also talking about cargo theft, obviously, because also in that regards, we see the professional organizations which take place in the theft of large amounts of goods.
So why are we here? As law enforcement, we have a tendency to say exactly what we want from you and demand things and then give nothing back. That approach worked for a while, and it works for certain criminality, but not always. So we've decided to go back to basics and actually open a dialogue. Have more of a two-way dialogue with yourselves as the representatives of the industry and as the specialists. We don't assume that we know everything. Quite frankly, the risk picture in the world changes every day. So 5 minutes ago, the main threat was around heroin, cocaine smuggling. Now we're seeing massive rise in synthetics. That looks very different in terms of how it's being transported, what's being found, what kind of volumes we're talking about. That's why we need to talk to you, because we want to rely on your gut feeling, on your intuition, to know exactly what doesn't feel quite right for yourselves, what doesn't feel right for your employees, what do your drivers see on the road, are they being approached, if so, where? And this is why we want to open this two-way dialogue where appropriate, and I will stress that throughout the presentation. We would like to give you a feedback based on the information you supply. Sometimes it may take a while, but we'll do our absolutely best. As Tom mentioned, TFOC was the leading force behind this cooperation. Tom's team approached the UK back in 2022, and as of 2023, we've created Keep Logistics Secure project in the UK, which is exactly the same setup as TFOC in the Netherlands. As you can see on this map, those are just very few routes that kind of caused us to focus on this particular connection between UK and the Netherlands. Another factor was we both have quite a shameful reputation. So the Netherlands is the hub for all the drugs in Europe as a distribution logistical hub. UK is the biggest consumer of cocaine in the world. And Scotland is now the biggest consumer of synthetics. So there you go. We thought it's probably time for us to join forces and do something about it. And also, as Tom mentioned, we're not just looking at the road transport, but the road transport is a massive part of the picture. We're also looking at sea and air. So the cooperation started in 2022. What was different this time, apart from just approaching each other on a case-by-case basis, we actually established a more rigid collaboration structure. So we've got different agencies. In the UK, we've decided that the point of entry into the country is the place where we can make the biggest impact. So that's why Border Force is the leading force behind this. But we also speak to UK police. We also work very closely with the National Crime Agency, our customs, etc. And it's the very same in the Netherlands. We share our best practices with each other. So, for example, we have very highly trained officers who are field intelligence officers who actually physically go out and engage with truck drivers at rest stop areas or on ferries when they're crossing, as you've seen on the map. We don't assume that the way UK was doing things is the best. We very much opened up to the Dutch approach, and it really worked for us, and vice versa. And the important thing is the international focus. So it's not purely just trying to focus on what are the threats domestically, but what actually are threats around the globe and how we can actually work together to address them.
Yes. So this is a very uncommon thing. If you look at police forces over the entire world, we are a very repressive organization, which means that we all start working as soon as something already happens. And about four and a half years ago, we said, let's try to become more of a preventative team. And part of what we did was actually quite interesting to see. And we came up with the effect that prevention eventually will always lead to an intervention. And what actually happens is what we've done over the past 4 years is we go to the transportation companies, such as the ones you've got yourself. We go to the small companies, we go to the large ones, we go to all the companies we have. But please realize that only in the Netherlands we have about 60 to 1,000 transportation companies registered. So that's quite an interesting task we had. But what we actually did is we created something which we call a toolkit. And this is all about awareness and innovation. So what you'll see here is what we've created in 2020, and we're still using it today. And it may seem a bit odd, but we have started with a coffee mug, because I will probably be the only one in this entire room who doesn't drink coffee, but the majority of the drivers we encounter, they'll drink a cup of coffee with us. And the effect was enormous. It was huge, because what actually happened, instead of fining a driver for being too heavy or too long, and I know we still do that, we also went into communication talking about organized crime. Where do you travel to? Where do you come from? How often do you do this? Have you ever seen anything? Every driver has something to tell. We eventually also went to the companies itself. So we created an addition to that toolkit with a mouse mat, and you'll probably think, why do you need a mouse mat? Because a planner within a logistical company will usually be the first one who will encounter a customer which could be a criminal. So put on the 5 golden rules, and you'll have someone who will be constantly notified by the fact, you know what, within my role I need to be clear. We have a water bottle, basically for me because I don't drink coffee, and we have a brochure. And in that brochure, we have everything which is relevant for a transportation company to know, or for a driver to know, what do I encounter when I'm on the road, or what do I encounter when I'm loading at a client, or what do I encounter when I'm going towards my destination. Our UK partners with Keep Logistics Secure, they've made their own toolkit, which is very similar. So we even found drivers throughout the years who have the coffee mug from the Netherlands, and now they've got the coffee mug from the UK, so it's sort of a collector's item. But the thing is, if you look at the products, the only thing you'll see is a QR code and some advice. There's no logo, there's no Dutch police logo, there's no UK police logo, it's just a QR code, and we did that deliberately. Scan that code, and you will come up to a website, as well as in the UK as in the Netherlands, with some material. There's footage on there, there's a short video, which takes about 2 minutes in 7 languages. We're extending that to maybe 20 languages in the future. The only thing we want to achieve is that the driver and everyone who uses these products will see and learn what the risk is of criminal interference within logistics. What we are about to do is show you an introduction clip of Operation Zelos. We made that game in 2022. The reason behind Operation Zelos is that we want to make the drivers more aware of what they're actually encountering while on road. It's a game, you can all play it freely. We host it as Dutch Police. You play it in about 40 minutes, but it's a really interesting method to see how a driver or a haulage company gets more aware of what they're actually doing. Kat, do you have anything to add in regards to the toolkit?
No, what you said about the collector item is spot on. For us, it was about making it as similar as we could to one another, just so the message is the same. So if people see the logos that are similar, it actually resonates. And the anonymous factor that Tom already mentioned about the websites it takes you to, so the people who are concerned can report things anonymously. That is a big selling point for us.
Yes, and what is important to know is we don't just throw a coffee mug into a lorry. We actually have that conversation, so it's always a warm handover. What is interesting to know is that our Scandinavian partners, as well as our Irish partners, are also looking towards developing their own toolkit, because prevention will always lead to intervention. We'll come back to that in a little later. I'll show you the clip.
1000 kilo harddrugs zijn het afgelopen jaar onderschept in de Rotterdamse haven. Miljoenen containers die worden afgeleverd zijn een ideale verstopplek waar drugsbendes hun handel, vooral cocaïne, in vervoeren.
Ik weet niet of dit wel klopt.
Gewoon bevestigen en de papieren in orde maken.
So what you saw is the trailer. And again, we will make sure that the game will be shared with you throughout the mailings of TAPA. But the interesting part is it actually has effect. So we have about 5,000 or 6,000 players by now. And they actually see what happens, because a reefer container filled with bananas taking from the harbor to a certain location, that is what we see happening on a weekly basis. But also the small, sometimes very subtle indicators which focus on, are you being followed? Do you need to deliver your cargo on a different location, on a strange location? Whether that is narcotics, whether that is cargo theft, it is usually in those very small indicators which matter. Looking at our operational approach over the last 4 years, as I mentioned, we have created some material. We actually also went out, because I'm a detective, so we also actually go out to the companies, and we also approach the bad companies, obviously, and we start investigations. What we've done is we've created a national and eventually an international concept, and we hosted more than 50 action days. So what we actually do is we go out through the entire Netherlands, we go to the UK to talk to the drivers, but also to check the bad drivers. The coffee mug I showed you, I think we've handed out over 5,000 of them, just to go into conversation with drivers to see what actually the effects. So prevention, again, will lead to that intervention. And that intervention is that we got in over 400 notifications over the last 4 years. That doesn't sound like a lot, but for us that is quite a lot. Every notification which we get from a transportation company or driver is relevant to us. Out of those 400, we've done more than 130, I think by now maybe 150 seizures. And a seizure can be narcotics, a seizure can be human smuggling, it can be everything which is illicit. But we also get in a lot of notifications from companies who suspect their cargo to be stolen by a fake carrier. I've brought my colleagues from the Netherlands here, of which Marco is one of them. Marco is specialized in dealing with companies who are encountered with fake carrier fraud. So if you have questions about that, also find my colleagues after.
From the UK perspective, our achievements are very much similar, a bit smaller because we started 2 years after TFOC team. But it is all about, as Tom said, engagement. So going out, as I mentioned before, to the truck rest stops, to secure parking areas where drivers actually physically have time to speak to us, going to companies, delivering bespoke training sessions. So the companies concerned about something in particular, we can adjust our training. We can present you current risk picture within the area you operate in, obviously within reason, so we can't disclose operational information, but the vast majority of information we have is actually widely shareable. The thing that I would like to stress, and I probably should have stressed it at the beginning of the presentation, is that both Tom and I work to very different our governmental priorities, whether we agree with them or not, and some of the policies we had that tend to be slightly inflammatory, like Brexit or civil penalties. We are aware of them. We can't change them as law enforcement officers, but we are also trying not to ignore your concerns in regards to those and signpost those to relevant agencies. So we've already highlighted the fact that we work across the two sides of the channel, but also internationally. And the big aspect of our cooperation is the very close work with the private sector, which for law enforcement is not, especially in the UK, it's not something that's commonly done. We work and engage with organizations like TAPA, who've been incredibly welcoming to have us here, and we're super grateful for that, and we hope this cooperation will carry on. We spoke at conferences organized by European Transport Board, by our regional agencies of the same magnitude. We are also engaging with organizations like World Customs Organization, Europol, Interpol, etc. We are building a global network, a truly global network, because the threat we're trying to encounter is not only specific to the Netherlands and the UK. And the overall aim and achievement is for both of us to essentially speak the same language. So in many languages, but give the same message. And wherever the driver is approached or wherever the company is approached, the message is exactly the same from two sides.
So looking towards the future, what I've mentioned is that when we look at international haulage, if we're looking at the haulage of narcotics, if we're looking at something illicit, it will always cross a border, usually multiple borders. So what we said is that the cooperation is very important. Where we started in the cooperation between the Netherlands and the UK, that was for us an obvious first step. Yes, the majority of the drugs in Europe go through the Netherlands, unfortunately. We know the UK is a large consumer. But the fact of the matter is, if we're looking at the illegal haulage, but also looking at fake carrier and haulage theft, it will usually always cross a border. So we need to work international. The TFOC and concept from the UK has already been extended to our Scandinavian partners. Why? Because we do actually see that they are at risk. And we're talking about Norway, Finland, Denmark, Sweden. We have extended to Ireland, and we're working towards Germany, Poland, and Belgium. So our network is becoming larger and larger. We are also training and working together with our law enforcement partners. Because prevention, as I said earlier, is not something we do standard, but it will always have the effect we want. And as Kat just mentioned, the public-private cooperation, that is a necessity for us to tackle organized crime, whether that's about theft or whether that's about the movement of illicit goods or human smuggling. We do need to work together with you guys. And if Kat just mentioned it in the presentation from Amazon, we do need to cooperate with you guys to get more insight and to actually know where we can invest with our limited amount of personnel we've got the best as we can. What we do is when we go to these haulage company, it's a bespoke training, so it's never been done before in this matter. We'll always make it custom fit. And I know if you talk to our colleagues, especially again to Marco, he's been doing this for longer than I can imagine. He goes to these companies and it has effect. They will always talk to him about what is deviating from their standard. And let me be very clear, if it deviates from your standard, it is usually wrong. So a criminal will be trying to interfering in your logistic route. We're also expanding to the other modes of transport. So as mentioned, yes, haulage over the road is a very relevant matter, but air, rail, and water is too. We see it coming together, we see it going apart again. And again, from prevention, intervention, we will do whatever we can to tackle that. Do you have any additions to that, Kat?
No, thank you.
Perfect.
The only, the last thing I would like to stress is the think big approach that we've got. So it's about the global picture, and it's actually highlighting the risks that are sometimes becoming invisible or are easily disregarded. So for example, if we're thinking about smuggling of illicit goods, most of us think about drugs or firearms. Sure, it's still the biggest threat. There is also people smuggling, obviously. But what if I tell you environmental crime? And I'm not only talking about releasing waste into our rivers and lakes, but I'm talking about smuggling illegal timber, or smuggling illegally obtained gold, or illegal fishing. All of those three things I just named are perfect covers for organized criminal gangs. So we are talking about either money flows, this is their way to launder money, or this is the cover load, which is how they actually hide another illicit commodity they want to smuggle. If I say about tax evasion, so smuggling large quantities of cigarettes or alcohol, we are not only talking about evading tax and bringing illicit commodity to the country, we're also talking about feeding back into those organized criminal gangs that are behind this. So it's all interlinked, and even though the small bits of information that your employees may have, may on the face value seem irrelevant, it really is relevant, because for us it adds up to a massive picture that then we can act on.
Perfect, and I think within time we would like to close it off. What we like to stress, and that is a very important one, is that yes, it is together for safe logistics. So everything we've done over the last years is related to transport and logistics. On the one hand, to keep it safe, so the preventative side. On the other hand, to actually tackle organized crime groups. And we did so. And I'm gonna state one small example, because I think that's very relevant for you guys. If a transport company or a haulage driver reports something which is deviating from what is normal for you guys, so your standards, it is usually wrong. And we saw that happening about 2.5 years ago, the beginning of 22, when a transportation company called us and said, you know what, I've got a new customer, and I looked at your brochure, and this new customer basically validates everything which is in here. So everything which is deviating is coming back here. And he said, I need to transport 4 pallets to Sweden. Something is wrong in this regards. And it was actually a beautiful case from one of our community officers. What happens, we come, we check, we see narcotics are trying to be moved. But by the fact that he saw that small matter, which was interesting to us, we were able to arrest and apprehend 22 suspects. So the entire organization was demolished. We seized about 5,000 kilograms of narcotics over a period of 4 months. And we saw that they had a revenue of about 900 million euros. And to be very clear, this is just one of the many organized crime groups we've got. But by that small notification, we actually saw what they were doing, and we were able to completely tackle that organization. So I would like to state the importance of together for safe logistics. We can't do it alone. Thank you again for your attention, and if there's any questions, please let us know.
Thank you.
Tom and Kat, Tom and Kat, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. If you'd both like to take a seat, we've got lots coming through on the app, which we won't get time to get through all of them, but if we don't get to your question, then they will try and be answered in a future edition of Vigilant. But thank you both so much. So let me just start by saying, is it possible to get the QR code for the drivers? Are you able to share that?
Definitely, yes. All the material, whether that's Operation Zelos or whether that's a QR code, everything can be shared. It's free and it can be shared.
Okay, fantastic. We'll make sure that happens. What do you think are the benefits in what you're doing combined with the PSR scheme? And is there also anything that the PSR scheme could be doing in supporting information for you? Kat.
I think all of the systems are complementary, so it is actually all adding together. So sometimes it may feel like a repetition, but it's also due to concerns like data protection or the limitations between how agencies can actually share information. So yes, I think we can benefit from both and can make them a holistic approach, essentially.
Did you want to add to that?
No, I completely agree.
Is there a European idea to digitalize and harmonize police reports and share the data?
Yes, so we already have communities within Europol. We've got Interpol, obviously, which tries to combine as much data as possible. There's always a bit of a challenge and a risk in sharing data back and forth between nations. But we try to do that as best as we can. And I think the TFOC semi-qubit cooperation between the United Kingdom and the Netherlands is a good example of that. So we use Europol, we use the communications channels which are already in place to share quick information. But we also share, and that's where you guys come in as the private sector, we also share trends, indicators, new modus operandi, everything we need to know to see where we can tackle organized crime smarter.
Another question that's come in is asking, has there been an increase or a decrease in preventing transportation of clandestine entrants or goods to the UK since February 2023? Kat.
Very good question. The numbers haven't changed significantly. We are working very closely with our clandestine entry teams to make sure that the intelligence we are also receiving through this project is feeding into what they're doing. Potentially now, the routes have to be a little bit more creative. So what we see a little bit more, and what's no secret, is abuse of the common travel area, which is going via Ireland as opposed to going directly to the south of the UK.
And just two very quick questions before we wrap up. Can you tell us what happens to the information that companies share with the law enforcement agencies?
Yeah, so what we try to tend to do is also look at security and safety of the company itself, because obviously there's a bit of a risk. So we're talking about cases in which we sometimes find 100 kilograms up to maybe a couple of thousand kilograms of cocaine or heroin or any other illicit goods. So the first priority is to keep the company safe for as much as we can, and we've got methods for that. But the information will always go in our system. And that's partially for criminal investigation purposes, but partially also for the trends, the developments, everything we see happening, so we can share that with our partners.
And just finally, is there anything further that, as an industry association, TAPA EMIR can be doing to support you further?
In all honesty, what we see happening, the cleaner the company, so the better your reputation is, the bigger the risk is you have on being actually involved in criminal interference. And the reason to that is because criminals will seek companies who will have clean passage to other destinations, to other countries. So being aware of the fact that even if your company is extremely well in security and compliance, you can always be at risk. So please be aware of all the small signals, everything you see, and also share that with your TAPA brothers and sisters, because that way you can actually create more information within that network, and we will get that fed back from TAPA, and we will try to feed TAPA also with the trends we see happening.
Kat, did you want to add something quickly?
Very briefly, just talk to us, because we may be missing a trick. You're our eyes and ears, so please just talk to us.
Kat and Tom, thank you both so much for that excellent presentation and being with us in Düsseldorf. Thank you.